Thanks for checking out our video on the Voyager convertible trike. Today we're going to talk about the preload, why it is important, and how to re-preload your Voyager converted motorcycle. The preload is the downward force on the outside wheels of your Voyager trike. Essentially, the preload uses the weight of the motorcycle to add tension to the leaf springs of the Voyager kit and distribute that pressure to the outrigger wheels. Take a look at this slow turn, where we have removed all of the Voyager's preload, making the turn more difficult and simulating many other convertible trike kits. Now watch the same turn, where the Voyager is properly preloaded. Notice how the wheels stay firm with the ground, allowing turns with ease while providing a great ride. The Voyager preload is so strong, it allows turning at high speeds in a tight radius. At these speeds, you may lift up the inside wheel a few inches, but you're still very stable. The Voyager's suspension keeps the downward force of the preload while keeping the kit's motion independent of the motorcycle for a much smoother ride than a solid axle trike kit. A simple way to check if the preload is set up properly is to shake the motorcycle back and forth. If the outrigger wheels stay firm with the ground like so, then the Voyager is preloaded. However, if the wheels come off the ground, even just a few inches, like so, then your Voyager needs to be re-preloaded. When you find out your Voyager has lost its preload, safely and promptly bring the Voyager to a location for service. The preload instructions are located online in your Voyager manual and will follow this segment. Keep in mind you should perform a preload at least once per year, plus anytime it is clearly needed. If performing the Voyager preload yourself, follow these instructions and please call our corporate office if you have any questions. First, remove the rear mudguard of the Voyager. Then, loosen the 8 1/2-inch U-bolt nuts located under the rear frame tubing. If you have an older style suspension with the suspension lock bar, on each side of the rear frame tubing, underneath there are tabs, loosen up the 3/8-inch nut on each side. If you have the dual shock system, remove the bolt connecting the bottom of the shock to the suspension fork. If you have the rubber mount shock, loosen up the bolt connecting the rubber mount bracket to the suspension fork. Once loose, adjust your suspension fork, making sure the open end of the fork hangs over the outside diameter of the bearing 3/16 of an inch. Locate the suggested preload plate for your motorcycle located online or in your manual. Next, roll the bike backwards in neutral. Set the plate in front of the tire and roll the bike onto the preload plate. Next, tighten up your 1/2-inch U-bolt nuts. During this time, make sure the fork stays in the center of the bearing receiver. Next, torque your U-bolt nuts to 35 foot-pounds. Once all 8 nuts are torqued, if you have the older style suspension systems, tighten up the bolt connecting the bottom of the shock or the rubber mount shock bracket to the suspension fork. If you have dual shocks, make sure the shock stands as straight up and down as possible. If you have the suspension lock block, tighten up the bolts connecting it to the tabs of the rear frame tubing. Lastly, install your rear mudguard. Now your bike is preloaded and ready to ride.